Hello everyone, my name is Linda and I will be presenting on sea level rise and flooding mitigation strategies that cities are implementing to combat against increased flooding events. The issue of sea level rise is one of the most heard about climate change dangers. As humanity continues to pollute the atmosphere with greenhouse gases, the planet warms, melting ice and increasing the volume of the ocean. This is a huge concern because consequences of sea level rise range from increases in coastal flooding that can damage infrastructure and crops to permanent displacement of coastal communities, as we've seen last year with Georgia and the Carolinas experiencing hurricane-like floodings. This is a composite image from the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration GOES East satellite, capturing 21 named storms from the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season, which has been the third most active year in history. Hurricane Ida alone accounted for more than $60 billion in damages and 26 deaths in Louisiana. There are two main ways climate change is affecting ocean levels and their threat to the world's coasts. The first is ocean thermal expansion, which occurs when the ocean heats up and seawater molecules move slightly farther apart. The distancing molecules take up more space and leads to the ocean rising higher onto land. During the past several decades, about 40% of global sea level rise was due to the effects of thermal expansion. The ocean, which covers just over 2/3 of the Earth's surface, has been absorbing and storing more than 90% of the excess heat added to the climate system due to greenhouse gas emissions. The other major factor in rising sea levels is that increase in average global temperatures is melting land ice, which are glaciers and polar ice sheets, at a faster rate than natural systems can replace it. When land ice melts, that meltwater eventually flows into the ocean, adding new quantities of water and increasing the total ocean mass. During the past several decades, about 50% of global sea level rise was induced by land ice melt. Currently, the polar ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica hold enough frozen waters that if they melted completely, it would raise the global sea level rise by up to 200 feet. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 2019 conducted a study and published projections on global sea level rises. They projected 1 to 3 feet of global sea level rise by 2100 if greenhouse gas emissions remain at high rates, or if we continue at the consumption rate we are living with. By 2300, seas could stand as much as 16 feet higher under the worst case scenario. If we abide by the Paris Climate Agreement of holding the global mean temperature increase well below 2 degrees Celsius, the IPCC expects 1 to 2 feet of sea level rise by 2100, represented by the blue line. The global warming has global sea level rise about 8 inches since 1880. Over the next 3 decades, the cost of flood damage is on pace to rise 26% due to climate change alone. This is a side-by-side sea level rise and vulnerable communities comparison of the coastal areas of Los Angeles and Orange counties from an interactive map by NOAA. On the right side is a 2 feet level rise. There are increased areas of low-lying areas being vulnerable to risks of flooding and small areas in Huntington Beach for sea level rise and impacting the more vulnerable areas. On the left side is a 6 feet level rise showing heavy sea level rise across the coast, entering vulnerable areas. These communities would have to move out of their communities for safety and would never be able to return. A research team at Bristol University finds that today's risk is predominantly concentrated in white, impoverished communities located in low-lying areas, but the increase in risk as rising ocean reaches farther inland during storms and high tides over the next 30 years falls disproportionately on communities with large African American populations on the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. Historically, poor communities haven't seen as much investment in flood adaptation or infrastructure, leaving them more exposed. Despite recent devastating floods, people are still building in high-risk areas. With population growth factored in, the increase in U.S. flood losses will be 4 times higher than the climate-only effect. By 2100, areas now home to 200 million people could fall permanently below the high tide line. Flooding from sea level rise could cost the planet $14.2 trillion. The first case study I would like to present is in Bangkok, Thailand, where rapid development has caused many canals running through the city to be filled with cement, which makes the city extremely vulnerable to frequent destructive floods, sometimes after as little as 30 minutes. The city is built on shifting river mud, which is sinking at the rate of more than 1 centimeter a year and could be below sea level as soon as 2030. Chulalongkorn Centennial Park was created to mitigate the impacts of climate change on the city. The 11-acre park in the center of the city draws many students and residents to the green oasis, featuring ample space for outdoor meetings, an amphitheater, a recreation lawn, playgrounds, and even a small museum. The Thai landscape architects, Kochikorn Vorakom, used the university's rain tree symbol as inspiration for the park's design. Not only does the park mimic the tree's expansive branches and water-absorbing root, but it is also a metaphor for creating a big rain tree for society. They added green pathways along the heavily trafficked road that runs perpendicular to the park and enlarged the road from 12 meters to 30 meters, but reduced car lanes and replaced them with bike paths and proper walkways. So now pedestrians and cyclists come to the cooling shade of the tree-lined paths from each side of the park. King Bhumibol, Thai's previous monarch, often used the metaphor of monkey cheeks to describe how Bangkok could adapt to flooding. Just as a monkey holds food in its mouth until it needs to eat, so too should Bangkok be able to hold floodwater until the city can use it. This concept inspired the architects to build water retention components into the park: a green roof, wetlands, a detention lawn, and retention pond. Vorakom designed the park to sit at a gradual 3-degree angle so that the gravity pulls rain and flood water from the park's highest point, the green roof, to the lowest point at the other end of the park, where it fills a retention pond. The 3 large tanks below the roof and museum can hold up to 250,000 gallons of runoff water from the green roof. During the dry season, rainwater in these tanks can keep the park watered for up to 20 days. At the western end of the park sits Thailand's largest green roof, with a size of 5,220 square meters. The roof is covered with native grasses and weeds and requires little maintenance to handle the wet and dry seasons. There are also 4 connected wetlands along the park featuring dams, ponds, native aquatic plants that clean and filter the water, and an amazing escape for children from the busy city that they are used to. During mild rain, water flows through the wetlands and into the retention pond where it gradually evaporates. In a fun and practical touch, park visitors can ride a stationary water bicycle along the pond, simultaneously exercising while keeping the water moving and adding oxygen to it. I thought these bikes were a unique feature to the park. But in the case of severe flooding, the retention pond can nearly double in size by expanding onto the park's porous main lawn. Altogether, the park is designed to hold up to 1 million gallons of water. The second case study focused on Copenhagen, Denmark, a coastal city that faces a large risk of flooding from extreme rainstorms, which are becoming more common as climate change progresses, and sea level rises are estimated to be by at least 1.5 feet by the end of the century. In 2010 and 2011, Copenhagen was hit by 3 extreme cloudbursts over a 12-month period. Roads and infrastructures were flooded from the total damage from the worst and most destructive of the 3 events cost the city more than $850 million. These events caused the city to regroup and strategize and implemented the Copenhagen Climate Adaptation Plan to create 300 climate park projects. And these climate parks are designed to capture water in sudden storms, nearly 6 million gallons to keep it from flooding streets and buildings when the sewer system is overwhelmed. And Galvenparken was originally built in the 1920s in a low-income neighborhood and redesigned to preserve its historic design while preparing for the realities of climate change. The hockey court and an area inside the rose garden were lowered a few meters to become reservoirs for water, and a levee was created because the park was built on a slight downslope, so the highest part was open so water could flow in from the surrounding neighborhood. The levee is attached to small gates that open during normal weather and serve as park entrances, but when triggered by water, they automatically close in the event of a major storm. When there is light rainfall, the water will flow from rooftops in the neighborhood into an underground reservoir in the park that can store the water for use in fountains and for irrigation in case of a drought. Although I've never had to experience hurricane season or floodings personally, whenever I see news coverage of people affected by these horrible events, I would empathize with their situation and wish that there were more preventive measures that can be done for them. And it's really interesting for me to see how these unassuming techniques in parks especially can make a huge difference. And I hope I can be involved with creating something like this in the future. I hope you have enjoyed learning more about sea level rise and flooding mitigation techniques. Thank you for listening.